Hey Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing good. Yeah, how about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thanks for making time for me in the audience today. I'm really looking forward to talking to you, about your journey in co-founding Theory Wellness and then your current position as CEO of the company. But
hmm
before we do so, Brandon, let's first, talk about you and allow the audience to get a sense of your background. So, as I was kind of looking through your bio and some of your background information, I see that you were a serial entrepreneur growing up, even prior to to starting in cannabis in 2014, I believe it was. So,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
led you on this path? And tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to meet my business partner Nick during our freshman year of college. We went to school at Colby College up in Maine, and we were kind of, we weren't roommates, but we were right down the hall from each other, and we were both econ majors, also philosophy. He did a major, I did a minor in philosophy, so we were in a lot of the same classes.
Philosophy. Not you
And
don't hear that very often. That's awesome,
Yeah, no, I
man.
think econ philosophy is kind of a fun pair because this really helps you kind of balance out the analytical with the more open-ended like problem solving.
Sure, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, we always wanted, talked about doing business together. We had a variety of internships during college, during the summers when we were, in between freshman sophomore year, things like that. And we were like, let's just try to do some sort of company together. It's worth a shot now. We don't really have any reason not to try at this point. We don't really need like to get jobs instantly. No one's depending on us. Like we can try to scrape by. So in college, we launched our first company, which was a sustainable drinking water company called Blue Reserve. And the mission there was an environmental mission. And we essentially would replace the 5 gallon water bubblers as big water bottles that get delivered by the trucks with a inline filtered system. And we grew that business for a few years based out of first Portland, Maine. Then we moved down to a little north of Boston.
So explain that a little more,
Yeah.
Brandon. So an inline system. So like how does all that work? What does that entail? What
Yeah,
problem
so
did you solve?
essentially it's similar to like hooking up a ice machine in your fridge at home. Just uses a little water line that we can plumb in from anywhere mainly office buildings where our main clients. And then it goes into a water dispensing machine that has a filter in it, hot and cold water. So at the end, customers can provide their office with the same sort of product, either chilled or hot water, but they eliminate the bottle and all the waste and expense associated with it. So
Wow.
it really took off. We had a couple thousand of these things out there, and it was a good little business. And around 2014, we had hired some management to kind of run the day to day, and we started looking to do something different. And cannabis seemed super interesting at that time. It was, it's still pretty new of an industry, but back then it was definitely new. And really out, we were based on the East Coast, and we didn't see any action out there yet to speak of. So we looked to kind of go out to California and learn that business.
Was there a light bulb moment? Like, I mean, obviously the opportunity from an entrepreneur mindset, right? You just kind of see that this is a burgeoning industry. It's inevitable, it's going to happen. So there's an opportunity there. But like, did you also have experience or a relationship with the plant previously? Like
Oh
when did
yeah,
that light bulb moment happen, I guess? Or
yeah. I think for us there are two. We had always enjoyed cannabis in high school, definitely in college. And I think because we're, all from a younger generation, we see people drinking, going to the hospital, and we're just chilling, smoking a little bit, and we're like, why is this illegal? So it was
Right.
kind of always just in the back of our heads about it just seems like such a strange circumstance because it's not a harmful substance. Of course, it's the opposite. And I think I had read a book on the repeal of prohibition in college, and that for me was probably one of my first light bulb moments. Like, all right, well, alcohol went through a cycle. Why isn't cannabis going to go through a similar cycle? Um, and then once we started, I started just doing a literally unpaid internship out at Harborside in Oakland, California, just to learn. And the first day I got out there and just saw the, dozens and dozens of patients come in from all walks of life in such a sort of cool but yet normal retail environment, that was the real light bulb moment. Like, all right, this is going to come out to the East Coast, and we should try to get ready for it.
Yeah. What like role did you play as an intern? I'm sure, I guess you're just wearing multiple different hats and they got you doing different things, or were you focused on
Yeah,
something specifically?
I was kind of focused on their business development, supporting them there. So mainly with state licensing, they were looking to explore entering new markets like Massachusetts and Nevada and Illinois. So I helped work on the paperwork, not necessarily super sexy, but really important to kind of write your applications and apply for these kind of one-time permits. You know, states are moving away from that, but back then, especially in medical, it was a lot of these one-off opportunities to apply for a license, and you either win or you don't.
Mm.
So I was focusing on that and did that for about a year with them.
Yeah. I mean, not sexy work, but I mean, that's kind of what you start with, and you learn so much, right? I mean, because you're seeing it firsthand, you're rolling up your sleeves and actually doing the work. And then over time, where you're at today, I'm sure that gives you a really good vantage point within operations because you understand how the operations work. And then obviously the
Yeah,
next part of that is hiring the right people.
yeah,
So
no
let's
doubt.
Yeah, so let's talk about Theory Wellness. So I know that the company was founded in Massachusetts in 2015.
Yep.
And so it's kind of operates like a startup more than a traditional brand. So tell me a little bit about that and your current operations.
Yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate to have had a pretty, we've grown the business, but we've been pretty careful about maintaining independence from, an investor base or a board or things like that. So we do try to operate as a startup, and allows us to do interesting ideas. I mean, our whole ethos with the company is that, we all love cannabis, and we want to kind of create a company and a dispensary model and product lines that we'd want to see ourselves in the marketplace. So that's sort of where we're coming from on it. I've always been inspired by craft beer as well. I think craft cannabis, it's still, we're working on it, and we have some cool projects that I think will help get us there in a meaningful way. But our thought over time is that there will continue to be an evolution in the marketplace where you have majority of your products are much lower priced for the majority of consumers, but you can continue to elevate that higher end and see what you can do with some of these really interesting genetics and very controlled growing environments. So that's sort of what we've been trying to work through. And in respect to a startup, I think a lot of it is just because we are, again, we're small enough and nimble enough that we can make quick decisions and kind of make big pivots when we feel that's appropriate.
Mm-hmm. You alluded to, your passion for craft beer and kind of that scene. And then you talked about, you're really building Theory Wellness around what experience you'd like to see, right? Within that space, or I guess the company as a whole, the
Yeah.
culture. So what is that? What is that vision? I mean, how do you like, what would be the perfect kind of consumer experience in the dispensary in your eyes?
Yeah, man, it starts with the product. So cultivating interesting genetics. It's fun to have the hype strains, but we're trying to find, older varieties that might resonate with people who haven't seen them in a couple dozen years. Um, Starting to explore some more genetics that may not be as, commercially viable. Maybe they don't yield as much. Maybe they take, 1.5 times, 2 times longer to flower. But just, trying to cultivate an experience via the menu to start with that is unique, because what we see we're in commercial cannabis, we acknowledge that. What we see is pretty much everyone growing the same stuff, that you can get the most yield in the least amount of time on a room flip. And it becomes less and less interesting, I think, for consumers to kind of just go into dispensaries and see the same kind of strains all over the place.
Yeah, no,
um,
I
yeah.
agree. Go ahead.
Yeah, so get the product mix in, then interest. I mean, we've been, I think, pretty forward-looking in respect to beverages. Beverages are pretty cool. We built a canning line out a couple of years ago and launched one of the first infused beverages on the East Coast. Now we've got energy drinks. We just launched soda last weekend. Seltzers were the original product, and we're continuing to see, month over month growth in that category. So that's, products are important. And then the other side of it is the people, who's at our stores, how can they provide a really, fun experience and meet you where you want to be. Some people are going to come in, they have no experience with cannabis, they want the one-on-one, but we also want to be able to meet the very experienced folks, the connoisseurs, if you will, where they're at, and also maybe teach them something, or at least, make sure they're getting exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah, and that tends to really resonate with the consumer, especially in this industry, because like you mentioned, there's some consumers that really don't know much about the product or how it'll, make them feel or whatnot. And so
Mhm.
I think that's one area that I think you can agree that Theory Wellness does well, in that they really focus on the consumer. I mean, your NPS customer scores were over 90, I think, in some of your top performing
Yeah.
locations. So do you want to talk a little bit about, the 6 retail locations that you currently operate in, and
Yeah.
maybe the sales from those different locations?
Yeah. So currently we have 3 dispensaries in Massachusetts. We have a medical only dispensary down in Bridgewater, a little south of Boston. Around more central Mass and Chicopee, we have medical and adult use. Then Great Barrington is medical adult use. And up in Maine, it's all recreational, no medical up there that we're participating in. Then we have, Bangor, Waterville, South Portland. They're all different size stores. I mean, Great Barrington and Chicopee are our busiest down in Massachusetts, and some of the main stores are a bit slower, which I think customers really love because it allows more of an intimate experience. And certainly we never want to pressure people, but when you're in a busy store, I think you inherently feel that pressure a little bit.
Right.
And as you mentioned, the NPS scores are really incredible for any retail brand, let alone up and coming companies like Cannabis. They're world class, and we're really proud of what the team is doing there to really ensure that customers are getting what they want. And if they are disappointed, really ensuring that customer service follows up with them and tries to figure out what went wrong and how we can do better next time.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's actually, I do want to talk about, the experience management team that you have in place within Theory Wellness. But before we talk about the management team, let's talk about just the operations. We touched on a little bit
Mhm.
of it, but like operated, or excuse me, vertically
Yep.
integrated seed to sale operations. So do you want to talk maybe about, your cultivation? Then we can talk about manufacturing,
Yep.
finance. We've already talked about retail, and then maybe close on some branding.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, essentially, we're running the vertical model to the extent we can. In Massachusetts, we have a indoor garden, and then at the same facility, full hydrocarbon extraction lab, CO2 extraction, ethanol extraction, and then a variety of different infused product manufacturing. We also have an outdoor farm in Western Mass, which has been a pretty cool project. We were the first operational outdoor farm on the East Coast, and that provides us a lot of our live extract material, and we do get some flour out of it as well. So same up in Maine, indoor garden manufacturing, straight through retail. So that allows us to really control the quality of the products, and allows us to build our brands, as you mentioned. But again, most importantly, when we get feedback from customers saying, yeah, we like your seltzer, but we'd love a soda, we can actually make that ourselves. We don't have to kind of depend on somebody else stepping into that space to do it for us, which has time risk and quality risk. So we're really fortunate to have sort of built up that supply chain to support the stores.
Yeah. Now that's got to be a great position to be in, where you can just easily pivot, or even experiment with new products that are continuing to innovate, the product
Mhm.
line within cannabis. So
Yeah,
that's
it's fun. Yeah.
yeah. Well, let's talk about the experience management team. I mean, the importance of that structure being in place, and how it plays into competing against, let's say, public multi-state operators that are out there. I know Theory Wellness is
Mhm.
privately held. So talk a
Right.
little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been really fortunate to recruit what I feel is an extremely strong management team. That our leadership, our chief operations officer, chief marketing officer, chief financial officer. I mean, these guys are all coming from really strong conventional business backgrounds, but have been extremely willing to roll up their sleeves and learn this industry. And I think our team has a bit of an advantage where we're not, we don't bring in folks with egos that think that because they ran, you know, all the marketing for Coca-Cola, they know exactly how to do it in cannabis. I mean, it's like, you have to understand no one knows what they're doing yet. And if you think you do, you're probably wrong. And you have to be patient and learn from your mistakes, and you're really open-minded. So I think that's the team that we've built really embodies that mentality, which I think allows us to think a little outside the box across the entire way we're scaling the business.
Mm-hmm. Well, and how do you approach growth and scaling as a challenger brand?
Yeah, I think first of all, we're patient. I mean, we're not going to build out a huge indoor grow in Connecticut when we have one in Massachusetts, right? Because what's that going to look like in 3 years? We don't have to listen to, say, public markets and just put growth on paper for the sake of growth. We're trying to be really thoughtful about when we enter markets, how we enter markets, and try to think, how does this look in 3, 5, 10 years, and make sure that we are sustainable, profitable, all the way through. I think we're pretty risk averse of taking on, big acquisitions or building out huge facilities, because we're starting to see not even cracks, but I mean, not landslides. I mean, some of these public companies' performance and debt ratios. And I mean, there was this article that came out last week, which was crazy, that showed how, 10 of the biggest public MSOs aren't even paying their income taxes to the IRS. I mean, that sort of stuff is really risky in our view.
Yeah.
So I think we're approaching growth very thoughtfully, and not just for the sake of growth, but what are interesting things to do that we think will be impactful and achievable and make sense for our brand.
Mm-hmm. Well, and money talks, right? And so let's talk about your financial profile. I mean, the strength of it. Have there been successful capital raises? And if so, where are you ready to deploy that capital as we talk about growth and scaling for the future?
Yeah, so we've been fortunate. I mean, we've done a couple million here and there, pretty small raises comparatively to companies at our scale. Most of our growth has simply been fueled via reinvesting our operating profits. So I mean, we've been cash flow positive since year one, which is, from what we're told, fairly unique in the space. And we certainly have some capital ready to go. We're building out a dispensary right now in Vermont, which should open within, I'd say, the next month or two. We're looking at opportunities in New York. We have license out in Ohio for retail, one in New Jersey for retail. They'll start getting built out soon. So definitely got some projects in the works, but we're trying to be, again, pretty thoughtful and not overdo anything, because we don't want to get into a position that we see some of our colleagues in, where it seems pretty stressful looking at the long-term, debt liabilities and, these sale leaseback deals that are creating pretty unbelievable long-term obligations. So we're, again, trying to be pretty cautious and, just really reinvest into the company as a primary way to fund expansion.
Yeah, as I hear you talk, I'm just thinking like the tortoise and the hare race. It's like slow and steady focus, wins the race, and in most cases, if you're not jumping the gun and over committing and under delivering in certain states where you may not be ready for growth and expansion, then
Yeah. We're not trying to be the biggest company out there. We just want to be the best.
right. Yeah.
It's different. We're not trying to become the Budweiser, whatever of cannabis. We just want to do our own thing and be sustainable and be able to innovate and, create a good place to work.
I respect that. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the future and what it holds, right? I mean, no one can predict federal legalization. We know it's a matter of when, not if, but when it comes to the East Coast, there's dominoes that are falling, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
saw, so, what are your kind of expectations when it comes to the East Coast, and where do you envision theory playing a role?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're really excited about New York. It's still unfolding exactly what the opportunities might look like for us there, but we appreciate sort of the progressive, equity focused nature of the current program that's going to kick off in the next, I don't know, say 3-4 months. It seems like maybe a little bit sooner. And New York's going to be an awesome market. It should be, neck and neck with Illinois as the second biggest behind California. I mean, it's a huge state, 20 plus million people. So New Jersey's already adult use and starting to post some good numbers. Florida's interesting. It looks like at some point Florida will go adult use too. That'll be a great market. So we see, the dominoes starting to fall pretty fast, and we're looking at all those opportunities and being patient about it, but excited at the same time to try to get involved early, and kind of put our stake in the ground there. We have a lot of customers already are in those markets when we talk about New York, New Jersey, and we've had over 1 million different people visit our store out in Great Barrington. So a lot of them have come from outside of Massachusetts, and they're already familiar with the brand, and they're certainly messaging us every day, where is your New York store, where's your New Jersey store? So we're excited to kind of keep going that direction.
Hmm. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. So, like with New York, for example, I'm fascinated with like their approach to this. I'm fascinated with how every state's kind of
Yeah,
rolling their own way of doing it out for legalization. But in New York's case, they're not allowing for vertically integrated companies to come in, right? You kind of have to
right.
specialize in one area. So, what is retail really? What Theory Wellness is focused on in New York?
Well, right now we're thinking of doing, some sort of deal to get our brand out there with a kind of a product manufacturing, having someone who has a license help produce products for us to get the brand out initially into the first dispensaries that open. And then depending on how exactly the rules kind of roll out, maybe pivot away from that and go into retail, or maybe there's a way to keep that going a bit. But I think longer term, our artists are, if we have to pick a lane right there, if it's production or dispensary, we're going to go dispensary. I mean, Nick and I have talked about years. It would be, he grew up in New York City, I grew up in New York City suburbs, so having a cool dispensary in Manhattan has been kind of a dream of ours. So we're excited to put that into reality whenever we can.
Yeah, and I mean that's the brand name, right? I mean, ultimately, there's equity, there's value there on
Yeah,
uh on putting that storefront out, especially like you said with the potential. I mean, the New York cannabis market is going to be humongous, the biggest in the world, right? I
right.
mean,
It's gonna
yeah.
be, yeah, and it's fun. It's already is, it's like people. It's not like people are gonna wake up one day and be like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna go buy some cannabis." Like they're already doing it, and that's
Right.
cool. But it'll be cool to have even more options for people if they want to go to a store where everything's tested and labeled and branded. Then they can do that. If they want to not, that's cool too. I mean, we don't really care either way, as long as there's options out there for people who want regulated products.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And on the federal cannabis side, like I said, we can't predict when that's going to happen, but I mean, how do you see it rolling out? Like, I mean, obviously safe banking is definitely needed, the
Yep.
removal of 280E, right? But like, do you see those kind of happening all at once, or one before the other? And also, what are your thoughts on interstate commerce?
Yeah. Well, I think my guess is it's most likely we see kind of these incremental wins first with safe baking slash 280E reform. I think they should be pretty non-controversial, to get through, just to help the industry become more legitimate. Though, part of me wonders, 280E, I mean, we pay a ton of taxes. Everyone's paying a ton of federal taxes. I am a little wondering what exactly is holding it up. And I think maybe there's some people saying, well, maybe we shouldn't take this away yet. But I think it will be incremental. And then at some point, when the whole descheduling happens and it becomes regulated as if it was, alcohol, for example, then interstate commerce will certainly be part of the equation in some respect. but the nuance will be at the state level. I mean, these states are building programs that operate within state lines that generate a lot of employment and taxes for those states. So I could see certain states not wanting to participate in interstate commerce to sort of protect their domestic, if you will, businesses there from really cheap production coming from Oklahoma or California. If you're in Illinois, why would you want that stuff coming into your state? It's going to kill your own local economy. So I think that's going to be kind of an interesting kind of, I don't know, rollout to see how that starts to go down. It looks like, California and Oregon and Washington are kind of talking the most about trying to do something right now. So they might be the first to kind of participate in some sort of interstate commerce.
Yeah, that's that. I'm so glad you brought that up because a friend of mine, Austin, shout out to Austin, this over the weekend, we were talking about this and he mentioned that California was like um, basically in negotiations with Oregon and what was the other state you mentioned?
Washington, I think.
Washington. Yeah, to just say, you know what? Hey, we don't need the federal government to tell us we can do this because we're
Mhm.
operating in our own state, kind of I don't know what's the word, like the way in which we want to
Yeah.
execute and roll out the program, right? And if it involves interstate commerce with partnering states, then we can do so. That's
Hmm.
pretty incredible. So do you think that's going to actually happen?
Um, well, at some point it's going to happen. Yeah, it's going to happen, tomorrow. I don't think so, but I think, yeah, maybe sometime, next year. What's interesting, I've been doing this a little while now, and a lot of times it seems like nothing's going to change, and all of a sudden big changes happen really fast. Like we saw that with New York. It's a great example. No one really knew what was going on with the rollout of adult use, and all of a sudden, a couple weeks, they're like, "All right, we're licensed." All these hemp farmers are getting licenses like instantly, essentially.
Right.
Um, and that was, I mean, there's guys growing cannabis now in New York who are, just growing hemp last season, and they got licenses really quick. So things can move fast, which is kind of part of the fun. Kind of,
Right.
hurry up and wait, and then all of a sudden you'll get a quick change. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I get your point, and I agree with it because when my friend and I were talking, I didn't know how to feel about that, right? Because like when federal legalization happens, it's going to open the floodgates, probably with interstate commerce and all that kind of stuff. But I think like until we get there, there's a great opportunity for these states and these local economies, local communities to kind of build up, right? And kind of establish maybe some craft cannabis brands or
Mhm.
some really kind of unique specialty brands. And look, I'm all for like I'm a proponent of capitalism, and I know that what's coming is coming, but if there's a way in which we can kind of let it naturally progress instead of, and I think I understand why California is doing it. You tell me what you think, but because of the high taxation, how difficult it is to operate, and not only that, but the black market actually being a competitor, if not even, surpassing the legal market at this point
Mhm.
due to the high taxation. They're just trying to find a new avenue to for revenue opportunity, right? I mean, and that's
Yeah.
out of state.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And at some point, if you look at what they're doing up in Canada, I mean, those producers can export, at least the medical ones, they export around the world, right? It's not just from California to Oregon. It's from at some point California to Germany, and that's a whole new way to look at it. And I think that's why right now building the brands is important, and trying to do something a little different is important, so that as things do change, you have a good platform to kind of roll with that change.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I agree. Well, Brandon, as we wrap up, I want to leave you the floor. I mean, is there anything that we didn't cover or anything that you want to leave the audience with?
Trying to think. No, a very interesting conversation. Definitely appreciate it. Um, appreciate people tuning in and hearing us talk about it. I love feedback, so if you guys ever want to get in touch, definitely please do. I like thinking about this sort of the future, and what we know, what we don't know, what we think we might know, and trying to, I don't know. We'll see. It's been a pretty wild ride. Definitely some pretty interesting years ahead. Definitely keep an eye out for the beverages. It's what we're really interested in right now. I think the chairman of Curaleaf just said at a conference that he thinks beverages are going to be 50% of the market within, I think, 5 or 10 years, something, which is crazy because right now it's about 3%. So definitely,
yeah. Wow, that seems high, but I mean, hey, he would know, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. I think it sounds high too, but we've seen a lot of growth with it, and it allows a whole new sort of venue for consumption, whether it's
True.
social consumption at a bar, or you got the family barbecue and one of your aunts doesn't like the smell of weed, so you don't want to smoke a joint. But anyway, yeah, no, it's all good. I don't think I have too much more. I definitely appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate you coming on, Brandon. And where can people find Theory Wellness's website or social media if they want to learn more? And if you don't know the specific
Yeah.
handles, don't worry. I can drop the links
No, if
down
I don't
there.
know, I am out of
Yeah.
touch. We're just Theory Wellness on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and theorywellness.com or .org on the web, and check out our stores and menus and all that fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, I'll be sure to drop those links. Really appreciate your time, Brandon. I enjoyed it. I know the audience did as well.
All right. Yeah. Take it easy.
All right. And thank you all for listening. Bye.
Yep. All right. See ya.